Welcome to Sub-Sahran Talk. I am Evans Apia Kisi, the host of Sub-Sahran Talk. Sub-Sahran is Center for Better Society Advocacy and Research Africa. Sub-Saharan Africa is a non-profit organization that believes in a better society for all. We in Sub-Saharan Africa believe that a better society begins with you and I. Hashtag a better society begins with me. Like always, today we bring you another interesting discussion on the topic youth unemployment in Africa. I'm also happy to announce that today we are live on Facebook at Sub-Saharan Africa, and Albert Kobina-Mensah, who happens to be the CEO of Sub-Saharan Africa, would also be sharing the live on his timeline. For more information, please log on to www.subsaharafrica.org. Follow us on the various social media platforms: YouTube, Sub-Saharan Talk, Facebook at Sub-Saharan Africa, Twitter at Sub-Saharan Africa, and Instagram, Sub-Saharan Africa. According to the United Nations Population Division, Sub-Saharan Africa has the world's youngest population, with more than 60% under the age of 25, with high number of the youth unemployed or underemployed. Moreover, the International Labour Organization suggests that the youth population in Africa will continue to grow, with an estimated increase of 45% of the region's working age by 2030, presenting an opportunity and threat to job security. This condition of high youth unemployed or underemployed is likely to become increasingly challenging because of the current COVID-19 crisis that has caused numerous loss of jobs. In this episode, we discuss the reasons for the high unemployment or underemployed rate in Sub-Saharan Africa. We look at its consequences and how to create, sustain, and improve employment opportunity in that part of the region. And to help us discuss this very important topic on youth unemployment in Africa are Mr. Edmond Yeboah. He is a regular panelist on Sub-Saharan Talk. He is a research fellow at Sub-Saharan Africa. He is currently a doctoral researcher at the Institute of Global Health at the University of Heidelberg, Germany. He holds MSc in Life Science Economics and Policy from the Technical University of Munich, Germany. He holds Bachelor of Science in Agricultural Sciences from the University of Cape Coast, Ghana. Mr. Edmond Yeboah, welcome once again to Sub-Saharan Talk.
Thank you very much for having me here.
It's great and a pleasure to host you. Our next guest, who is also not new to Sub-Saharan Talk, also one of our regular panelists, is Mr. Lord Edusei Akins. He's currently a doctoral researcher at University of London School of Oriental and African Studies. His research focuses in international development policy and biosecurity. He holds a Master of Science from Stockholm University, Sweden, Master of Science from Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, Sweden, and Bachelor of Science from KNUST, Ghana. Mr. Lord Edusei Akins, welcome once again to Sub-Saharan Talk.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me as well.
Great. And then our last guest for today, who is new on the show, and we are happy to host him, is Mr. Peter Bismarck Kofi. He's the Executive Director, Institute for Liberty and Policy Innovation, ILAPI. He's a public policy analyst. He holds MPhil, or he's an MPhil student at the University of Education, Winneba. He has a mini MBA in management and leadership. In terms of his bachelor education, he holds B.Ed basic education in maths and science. He also holds a diploma in basic education in science and technology. He's a conferred fellow of the African Youth Leadership Program, certificates in think tank development and fundraising. His expertise are in employment policies, business policy research, startup consultancy, and conflict communication. Mr. Peter Bismarck Kofi, welcome to Sub-Sahran Talk.
Right, thank you so much.
It's a great pleasure to have you, Bismarck.
Right.
Great. So, guys, like I said, this is our first live streaming, and we are streaming live on Facebook, as I said, at Sub-Saharan Africa on our Facebook page. If you also follow Albert Kobina-Mensah, he's also sharing it on his timeline. Let me welcome you once again to Sub-Saharan Talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So we'll start right away. I think this is quite clear that, you know, the unemployed or unemployment plus also underemployment in Africa is very high. And we'll start a conversation this way. We would first want to look at some of the causes of, you know, such high unemployment or underemployment in the sub-region. So I'll start with you, Edmond, first. If you can touch on one or two main, you know, causes of the high unemployment rates that we have in the African region.
Thank you very much. So unemployment rates in the African region is very high, and it's not just an African problem, but also it's a global problem, because globally there is an increasing number of youth. If you look at the demographic change we are seeing around, especially in Africa and developing countries, it's becoming more and more younger. And in this sense, creating jobs that will consume or creating jobs that can cater for everyone is becoming a huge problem. And one of the main reasons why we are seeing this trend is the low education attainment, because it has been established through many research that education is a key milestone, or it's a key foundation when it comes to employment creation. Why? Because it feeds the labor market, or it feeds the business world with the necessary skills and expertise to run the economy. So when the education system is in shambles, or when the education system is not strong, it reflects, or we see the effect of it also in the employment market. The higher educated one is, the higher the employability, or the more skilled one is, the also higher the employability that we see. So education is one of the main reasons, or it's one of the main causes of this huge unemployment that we see among the youth. But if I want to focus it down, I'll look specifically in the case of Ghana. We can look at three components of education that has a direct link to unemployment. And the first one is access to education. And this simply means how many people can access education, or how many people do have the privilege to enjoy education. And if you look at it historically, education in Africa has always been a portion of the elite, because it came out of the colonial system. We had a different way of educating, which was more informal, more apprenticeship in nature. However, the colonial masters brought to us this formal education, and it remained a privy of the elite, or the rich, or those who were affluent in the society. So in the case of Ghana, not until 1957, education was not widespread, and it wasn't for everybody. But after 1957, when Ghana gained independence, that's when we see a massive shift, because the founder of the then Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, he thought that to move the economy forward, we had to develop the human resource to match up where we want to go. So in 1961, he proclaimed the free compulsory education, which had a lot of setbacks, because it was very rapid, and due to its rapid nature, they were faced with lack of teachers and lack of infrastructure, which kind of affected the quality of the education that was produced. It took us until 1978, I guess. No, it was 87, through the Education Act, when we could look at it again and then come up with a new way. And one of such effort was to reduce the number of education years. So fast forward, we've come to a point where we've increased access to education drastically. Now Ghana ranks among one of the best in Africa with about 84% of access rate. But the problem still remains that you've increased education in the primary sector and until recently in the secondary sector, because this was spearheaded by when President Kufuor started expanding our secondary schools, and then John Dramani Mahama also came in with day schools, and then came Akufo-Addo with the free SHS policy. So as we speak now, the literacy rate in Ghana stands around 79%, which is very interesting. However, if you want to go into how literacy rate is calculated, it's anybody with education over 10 years, which still falls under the primary education. So as interesting as it is, you still have your population not have the requisite skills for higher level employment. They have the basic skills, or they have the basic education, because that was a policy that we followed from 1961 up till now. It was the primary education as a priority. We know of the F cube, where much emphasis was placed in primary education. And now we are shifting into the secondary education. So on that level, one could say that access, we've covered a lot of access, and now it's very usual to know that every young Ghanaian is enrolled in school. However, another aspect of education is quality. And I think that is where most African countries, they are lacking, because quality is determined by the cognitive skills that you can impact to the people that you are educating. And this has to do more with the curriculum. We've seen a lot of curriculum reforms and changes, yet we've not seen the quality that we need, or we've not seen the education system being more practically oriented. We tried it in Ghana, but it didn't work that much, because in 1987, when they reduced the schooling years from 17 to 12 years. And that was the same year that they introduced the current system that we have, the primary, the JHS, SHS, and the SHS system. They also introduced vocational education in the JHS system. However, we all know what happened. It didn't succeed that much. And they went on to bring on board technical and vocational education, which since 2018, we've seen a sharp decrease. All the rest are increasing. If you see enrollment in primary school, it's increasing. Enrollment in junior high, enrollment in senior high, except enrollment in vocational and technical education. It has decreased about 1.3%, and about 50 institutions vanished from the period of 2008 to 2011. We don't know where it went, because there is a low prestige when people want to acquire skills, and there is low employability. This can be associated with other factors, as the rise of the service sector and the decline of the industrial and the agricultural sector, because they were the main employer of skills, as we call it. And so in terms of quality, we've not seen much change. And one problem that we have in the country when it comes to the quality of education is that it's not just the government, but it's the people. We all focus on getting the theory and not the practical. Everybody wants to go through the SHS system and go to the university, but this track is predominantly academic knowledge that they are given there. It's not practical knowledge. And nobody want to go to the technical, nobody want to go to the polytechnics. And now they're even changing the polytechnics to its form of universities, and the technical aspect is being lost. So we produce a lot of academic graduates with low skills for the job market. So that's the side of the quality. And then you talk about the relevance. It links with the quality. So how relevant is the skills that we are producing, or how relevant is the knowledge that we are producing? And this is a problem. The business world is complaining, or the corporate world, they've been complaining for a long time that we are producing graduates that do not fit the system. We are producing graduates with knowledge that somehow outmoded. And there we also have a big problem. So we need to get to the point where we can revisit the curriculum and we can revisit the skill that we are giving to people in order to make sure that it's in line with what is needed in the job market. Because if it's not in line with what is needed in the job market, then as it appears now, we will produce a lot of graduates, we will produce a lot of educated people. However, the skill that we are giving them is not relevant. And on that sphere, one bottleneck from my point of view is the sharp focus of our education system on examination. Because if you look at it from the basic and also from the secondary level, it looks like nobody goes in there to learn anything. They go in there just to pass the BEC and the WASI. And we also see this reflect in the way they are taught, in which books they are used to, they used to teach, and how the perspective of the students, this is reflected in everything that we see around us. In that, we've now shifted from the use of textbooks and everybody's using pamphlets. And these pamphlets, they are like milk or honey. You know what I mean? It's just the juicy part. If you want to talk about a subject like, or a topic like pollination, you open these pamphlets and all you see is what is the definition of pollination and the causes of pollination and the effects of pollination. It has been arranged just the same way that WAEC asks their questions. So we've reduced everything to like an exam-oriented education. And if we want to look at one of the index of education, which is the Bloom's taxonomy, which the Deputy Minister of Ghana alluded to when he was giving a speech in Kenya, it has shifted from giving people the ability to memorize to giving people the ability to be creative. And that's the question we need to ask ourselves. Is the education that we are receiving in our country creative oriented, or is it just memorizing oriented or examination oriented?
Yeah, maybe I would have to let you pause here. I would definitely come back to you, but you raised a number of very key points here, which I captured as, so you see that the main problem now would be this skills crisis, where you captured the nice phrase that we are producing graduates that do not fit the system. Before I come to you, Peter, and also Lord, for your main thoughts on other areas. What do you think about this statement, with this kind of statement that Edmond made, that we are producing graduates that do not fit the system? I'll start with you, Peter, first. What's your opinion on that? Do you agree with Edmond that indeed we are producing graduates that do not fit the system, or it's just that they fit the system, but there are not enough jobs? If you could unmute yourself, Peter.
Yeah, I think I do agree with Edmund. I know every year, according to statistics, we have about 380,000 graduates coming from the universities. According to ISA, only 10% will be employed in their first year. And then it takes about 10 years for the others to be employed. We have lots of graduates, doesn't mean that we shouldn't have jobs. The problem has been the expansion of the available jobs. We are used to the normal kind of jobs. For example, if one is into manufacturing, you go to manufacturing companies around, the consistency in what they produce hadn't somehow not increased, because sometimes they feel the market isn't there. There was a time Gassem was even complaining about having a lot of cement in the factories and they don't have buckets. So government should even bring in other cement manufacturing companies. So I'm looking at the expansion of the jobs. I mean, the innovations that comes with the kind of job they do will demand more employees. So if you are used to the production of phones, and then you don't add camera to it, so if there's camera added to it, you have different kind of groups or another group coming in to fix cameras. So you have others being employed there. If you are producing, you need to add something to it, and then another group. So we don't expand, we don't innovate to expand and get more people to get employed.
Okay.
So that has been, so we have lots of people coming out, but we don't have let me give you an example before I leave. Look at all the Ghana. All the ministries in Ghana, they all have websites, but not the websites are functioning. You get it? Some of them are even off. There are 254 district assemblies. They don't have websites. But every year we are having students coming up from the university with certificates in IT and computer science. And they are all out there. Why are we not absorbing them to create websites, manage them, give them graphic designs for these ministries and district assemblies, as well as other agencies? You know, when you do that, you're obviously accommodating all these graduates coming from the university. So the expansion, the innovations are not there to absorb the numbers that comes from there.
All right. I'll definitely come back to you. Thank you. And Lord, what do you also have to say to the phrase that I captured from Edmond, that we're producing graduates that do not fit the system? Is it really the case, or it's a combination of the fact that we do not have enough jobs? Like Peter also said, that we are failing or we're refusing to expand the available jobs.
Thank you. I think I agree with both Peter and my friend Edmond. Both are correct in their analysis. First of all, producing graduates that do not fit the system. If you look at what has been going on in the world in the last 40, 70 years, you realize that the countries that are performing well economically are those that have invested in technical education. But if you go to Ghana, we've been producing, like my friend Edmond said, that we've been producing a lot of students with a background in academics. Therefore, they are not fit to be used in doing anything. So you go to, say, China, for instance. China has been producing a lot of students with 4 key backgrounds: science background, technology background, engineering background, and mathematics background. These are the 4 what they call the STEM. The STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. About 50 years ago, studies were conducted and people became aware that due to global competition, countries can only perform if they invest in certain areas of the educational system. And the 4 areas they identified was what I just mentioned. If you come to Ghana, we have not been doing well in these 4 main areas: and science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. A lot of the students, they read arts and business. But for you to use the business, you should have people who can innovate, engineers. You need people who can also link knowledge with growth. And that is also mathematicians and science people. So because we've not been doing well or investing so much in these 4 key areas, we are producing students that cannot go to the factory to do anything. They only have probably economics background, they only have geography background, or they only have social science, I would say. So this social science background, they are very good because it also helps us to analyze the country where it is going. However, for you to move forward and for you to get a lot of people into employment, you need to build certain capacities. And these capacities are in these 4 critical areas. And that is where we've been failing abysmally. We have not been, how many engineers do we produce in Ghana? How many technology graduates do we produce in Ghana? There are schools that do not even have a single computer. So if a JSS graduate or student goes through that school, he would never get to know anything. Meanwhile, he's supposed to be used in a factory to fix or to analyze data. So we have been failing in these 4 areas. That is why I said I agree with it. But with Peter, I also agree with him strongly because the economy is a function of what it performs. If the economy is strong enough, it is able to generate a lot of employment, and then people will be employed. But when the economy is very weak, that economy can never employ a lot of people. And that is also one thing that we have in Ghana. Our economy is very weak. And because it is very weak, it is not able to absorb the 380,000 that my friend Peter was talking about. And because it is not only able to absorb them, a lot of them become unemployed for a long time. So it is also a function of the weakness of the economy. Our economy, if you look at this historically, it has been growing on an average of 5%. The last 30 years.
Then you do that in a minute or two for me, so I go to Peter, please.
Okay, so, but I want to chip something in after Lord.
Very well.
Yeah, in the last 30 years, the economy has been growing on average 5%. However, you need about 6 to 8% for the economy to actually do well and to absorb all of these people who are coming out of school. So if the economy is growing at that level, you're definitely going to have a huge unemployment. And therefore, what we say in Ghana, it has to do with how our economy has been performing over the last 30 years.
Thank you very much, Lord. I will definitely come back to you. But Edmond, can you do that in a minute or two for me, please?
Yes. So I want to pick up on what Lord said on the proportion of different students that we produce in different fields. And the point was that it's not as if we are not producing enough in the different fields. However, it's the quality of what we are producing. I give you an example. Ghanaians are good in memorizing and they are good in writing exams. That's why we excel everywhere we go. If we use that as an indication of the strength of our education, you would say fantastic, because we are all Ghanaians and we find ourselves in all corners of the world and we compete fiercely when it comes to the theoretical things. But the main problem is there's a difference between the theory and the practice. So take it at this way. A building contractor is different from the architect. The architect makes the drawing, but there is somebody to interpret the drawing. And there is somebody also who should be on the ground to build the interpretation from the contractor or the foreman. When we are producing only architects, we know how to draw, but we don't know who will translate this and who will build this. So this is the problem. We are producing engineers with less practical knowledge, that they know the book, they know their theories, but they have no idea. And the in-between, which should have been produced by the vocational education and the technical education, they are the missing point. So at this point, you have a lot of theoretical staff or theoretical people who can give you that beautiful idea, but they were not taught how to use the bolts and nuts and how to tighten things. That's not part of the theoretical education, which is fair to say, because there is division of labor and also there is also division in education, the way it's structured. So it's not the duty of the university graduate to go and build. It's the duty of the architect to draw, to do the drawings, and somebody to interpret the drawing, and somebody then to build it. So as a result of how, as a society, our perspective has changed on education. Because don't forget, I started by telling you that it was an elite system. So if you hear people say the common Ghanaian, they meant the uneducated Ghanaian. And the fact that nobody wanted to be a commoner meant that either you educate yourself or you educate your children. What happened was that then the standard became university education. When the standard is university education, we look down on all the others. And then we are funneling everybody into this one small tight corner. So we have a lot of theoretical graduates and we have less technical graduates who would then translate your theory into reality. So
thank you.
That is where the problem is now from my perspective.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I like the point on the, you gave some statistics on the fact that there's a huge decrease in vocational and technical education, partly due to prestige. And we'll come to that. And maybe when we get to how to, address these challenges, in particular in the educational sector, we'll definitely hit on that. So Peter, if I summarize what Edmond said, he seems to paint a picture that when you look at the problem of education, as far as unemployment and other things are concerned, we seem to be doing well in access, across Africa, even though he used Ghana specifically, but then we lack a lot in quality and relevance. But beyond education, which is a major cause of the high unemployment and underemployment. What are other causes that we have at hand as well?
Right. So I think, as you mentioned, education seems to be the major cause of, I think, among the cause. The others also have to do with policies that generate employment. You know, but most of the policies are mainly for, election purpose. So you employ people on contracts. If you go to the ministries, I'm always using the ministries because quite recently I've been visiting. And almost all the ministries had lots of people working there. They were all working on contracts. You get it? So after the term of a particular government, all those individuals in those ministries will all lose their jobs. You know, and then the new government also pick new ones. So there's a cycle of what I also call employment as a political cycle, where new governments create jobs, and then when another government comes in, the previous government has created, all those guys will lose their jobs, and then the new government also pick its members. So that's the cycle. So you have, political change or change of government creates employment and equally also destroys employment. And that's the situation we have. So government policies had to be more sustainable to create jobs. So if you have policies that are sustainable, we are not supposed to change their names. It's to mean a different thing. We are not supposed to change the model. We are supposed to continue provide innovation. We are supposed to expand. That's always to see. These things are not there regarding government policies. So if you look at the Vision 2020 document, for example, we had a lot of employment models. And these employment programs had been, destroyed. They've been changed along the line. Others too have been given different names. And all those guys who who were handling those projects had been sacked, and the new people will take over. You know, so and then you have another project again, Ghana Shared Growth, Poverty Reduction, 2020, a whole lot of projects. So government's programs are not sustainable to create jobs. Then I also talk about the issues of our generation. We are thought of going out to work in offices, white collar jobs. You know, so once you come from school, all your mental gathering is about getting office work, putting on time. But today I'm happy none of us are in time, but we're all working. So you will see that everybody is looking for white collar jobs. Once the white collar jobs are not there, people are reluctant to start a job from the scratch that could help them grow. You know, so people don't work in the blue collar jobs. People don't like the blue collar jobs like the masonry, the carpentry. You know, we say those people are, let's say, they're not intelligent back in those days. So those intelligent guys should go into doing this academic, studying social sciences and humanities. So the technical schools, all the people who don't understand mathematics at the first stage when they get there. In Kufuridia, where I have now, I visited the Kufuridia Technical Senior High, and they don't like mathematics. They said no, but they are studying engineering, they are studying building construction, they are studying metals, and all those things involve maths. You know, so the way we tune our students that when you get out there, they are banking, you are going to work in the ministries, you know, so we don't like the fraud work. So the perception right from school to the field had to be changed. That misconception that white collar jobs pays more, so everybody's rushing to white collar jobs. So when you put employment vacancy out there, you see that a lot of people are looking for the ones that will let them put on tie and sit in the air condition. Then the very last one I'll talk about is the advancement of unemployment vacancies. Or let's say employment vacancies. All over the country, especially the government, they don't announce employment vacancies. The bad jobs that are underpaid are those we advertise. And then the ones that pays well, the decent ones, are given to political party folks and friends and families. And at the end of the day, these jobs all then gets collapsed, so you can absorb new ones. you know. But I remember back in the 2000s, when I was very young then, you know, my cousins and my uncles will tell you that they've seen this opportunity in the newspaper, they'll follow up. Now you don't see these job opportunities in the newspapers. You don't see them at all. Ministry of Information, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, all these people, they have vacancies, but we don't put them out there. They only pick few people who are somehow not qualified or they don't deserve to get what they must get. We put them there and then they mess up. And then production is the same. So apart from the education, the mentality of our students need to be changed. We need to change the mindset that the real money is at the blue-collar jobs, carpentry, paint, masonry, you know, I mean, going to fabrications. These are the places where the monies are. Because if you look at China, you know, the manufacturing, they are the manufacturing sector. They've industrialized. Everything is our manufacturing. And if you don't want to go into these areas, what happens then? Then let's look at the licenses. It is so difficult to also obtain license or this occupational license when you are graduated from the universities on, let's say, for pharmacy, as a pharmacist, as a building construction contractor, or whatever. So expensive. If you want to be an architect, so expensive to obtain occupation license. All these things, prevent people from getting decent jobs and employing others. Because the renewal system, the bureaucracy in obtaining the license, go to EPA, go to Minerals Commission, so difficult. So there are a lot of obstacles, you know. So if the obstacles are there, people can create jobs for others to join the change. So education is one, but we need to also look at beyond education. So the beyond education mentality is one. Let's take out that misconception of white-collar jobs and let's focus on blue-collar jobs. Again, let's also advertise our jobs. Proper jobs, decent jobs should be advertised. And let's leave the jobs where you have to stay home on internet and make money of 500 Ghana cedis. Those ones are always posted outside. Then we should ensure that people, especially the government, also advertise the jobs for people to apply and help increase service provision as well as expand jobs in our system. We're able to do this, we wouldn't have a lot of these graduates in the job queue. At least we should have about 50 to 60%. Their first came after school. But these things are not there. So education seems to be the major, but then I think the misconception also must be taken out.
I will come to you, Edmond, to say a few things about what Peter said. But Peter, first, just one follow-up. When you brought in the perspective of the license forms of, exams or the licensure exams where you need to acquire before, maybe as a pharmacist or as a doctor, but I thought, is that not a good thing because you brought in the aspect of decent work? Wouldn't you say those things rather helps to promote job quality? Because in a country like Ghana or most parts of Africa where certificates are easy to come by, sometimes, and so people walk around and brand themselves to be lawyers and medical doctors. But this licensure type of exams is there to address some of these things. What do you say to that?
Yeah, it should serve as an obstacle to job creation, even though we are looking at the quality of jobs we need to create. So we need to just take out the bureaucracies because they are laid down that, for example, you must take 21 days to obtain a license from maybe Ghana Standard Authority, but it will take you about 3 to 6 months. You get it? And an investor has to stay in this period, so he gets to employ individuals. So sometimes it brings in frustrations.
It's true.
These investors, foreign, local, international, they all move out. You get it. So I'm not looking at it's not helping in terms of quality, but in terms of the bureaucracies that prevent people from creating jobs on time and within season. Okay, so that people can easily get it. And then the cost involved. Yes, it shouldn't be too high for people. Look, at the Ghana Standard Authority, to import a medicine, you need about $15,000 to do that. Local investor, why are we going to get that money for? You get it? But they are targeting the foreign investors over the local investors in terms of getting the license to operate or import medicine. Yeah. So it shouldn't be too exorbitant for people not to be able to pay. Driver's license, for example, is becoming expensive now. It's currently over $250 for Ghanaians. But initially, we were having driver's licenses around $100. Okay, but it shouldn't be easy. It should measure quality, but it shouldn't serve as the obstacles to job creation. That's what I'm.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I like the aspect that you brought in, that it's the bureaucracies and the cost involved that you talk about, but not necessarily how it. Now, so Edmond, Peter said something which was interesting for me. He says that the blue collar jobs, in fact, they pay more, pay better than the white collar jobs. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that, because you also mentioned when you talked about the challenges with quality, when you brought in the aspect of vocational and technical. What do you say to that? Because I think in the short term, this is something that, we could educate people to understand that it shouldn't always be to sit in the office and wear a tie. But in any case, do you agree that these blue collar jobs pay better than white collar jobs?
No, I beg to differ. It doesn't pay better. I mean, all over the world, the trend is there, and one can see that white collar jobs pay better than blue collar jobs. Again, it depends on which field you are working, and it depends on which level you are. But what I would love to say is that in strong economies, they try to decrease the disparity between the salaries or between the wages, which is very important, because when the gap between the wage is too far from each other, then what it means is that everyone wants to go to the white collar job because it pays more. But for example, in Germany, I live in Germany, so I can use Germany as an example. When I was a student and I was working as in restaurants, you are paid maybe 11 euros, maybe 12 euros, 10 euros. And then I got a research position as a research assistant, and you are paid per hour around 16 euros. So if one measures the difference, it's not that wide. So you can say that even if you end up in one of these fields, you wouldn't feel much deprived. But in our country, if you look at the gap between how much somebody earns in a white collar section compared to a blue collar section, it's not encouraging. And this is where I think you made a very good point, that we should bring into effect policies that will bring equality and policies that will bring dignity to whatever direction one decide to choose. Because at the moment, the minimum wage in the country is so low. And if we go by this minimum wage, it means people who decide to take on blue collar jobs and jobs outside the white collar job field will be subjected to low pays and will be subjected to low wages. And if that happens, then that is the result of what we see now. That it's not attractive. Everyone wants to get out. And one thing he said I really like is a change in perspective, because when we kind of defame the other jobs, I wouldn't put them in colors like white collar, blue collar. But the thing is that we have in our mind a picture, and that picture is we all want to go into this direction, right? Bank manager, I want to be a nurse, I want to be a teacher. That's good. But in an economy like ours, or in any economy, you don't build an economy with nurses and teachers and bank managers and whatever or police, soldier. But that's what I feel like every young Ghanaian wants to be. And what happens is that we are talking about public sector jobs. And in no country in this world does the government employ more than the private sector. So if the young people are looking at only what the government can offer them as in public sector jobs, then we see what we are seeing now. That place will be very soon saturated. And when it's saturated, you are a nurse, you are a teacher, but you still don't have a place in there.
Interesting perspective.
The mindset needs to change from now, that people do understand that we need to diversify. But the government need to help us in this regard to bring dignity in the other fields, to raise the minimum wage in some fields, to bring more protection, to invest in the education in vocational and technical fields. If we go to the
Edmond, if you don't mind, I mean, your point well made, because we'll come to that when we get to the second round to see how government and the private sector could help to address these challenges that we face. So I come to you, Lord, and before I want to ask you this question. So given these, high or these causes of unemployment and underemployment that we have in Africa, what do you think are some of the consequences that is likely to happen to the continent? But before that, if you can spend a minute or two to say something briefly on what Peter said as far as the labor policies do affect us. And Peter, I'm sure you might want to have a reaction when we come to the second round. I'll give you time to react to what Edmond said. Thank you.
I think I agree with Peter when he made mention of the fact that the unemployment situation in Africa has to do more with policies, government policies. And if you look at Africa and Ghana, for instance, you can see that from 1983, when the PNDC came into power, the PNDC actually came in 1981. But in 1983, they decided to have a shift in government policy. And one of the practical things that they did was what they call the liberalization of the Ghanaian economy. And by liberalizing the Ghanaian economy, they shifted from public sector dependency to private sector dependency. However, if you look at Ghana's private sector since 1983, it has been very, very weak. And when the private sector, which is touted as the engine of growth, is very weak, then you are more likely to also see a huge unemployment in the country, because the private sector, if it is doing well, will be absorbing a lot of people. Small businesses, if we go to America, for instance, it is not the major corporations that employ people. It is the small businesses. They employ 5, 10, 50, 100. And you see that these businesses are the ones that create jobs. However, if you look at Ghana, when we privatized or when we went to a liberalized economy, the private sector was very weak. The state assets that were also privatized, very few of them functioned. Very few of them. Those that functioned, they were also in the service sector. They were not in manufacturing. And I agree with Edmond when he said a country that produces has a lot of power to absorb. So if you are only in a service, that is, you sell, you retail, and you do that, you are not helping people in employment. You are actually selling, making money, and sending it to the person who is producing. And if you look at Ghana's GDP, the major contributor, formerly it used to be the agriculture sector. Right now, it is the service sector. The manufacturing sector has almost collapsed. And a country that has its manufacturing sector abysmally performing, that sector, that country would definitely have problem with unemployment, because the manufacturing sector tends to be the sector that absorbs a lot of people. If you check Korea, because they produce more, they export more, they create more locally, they create more jobs locally and even abroad. If you take China, for instance, they are touted as the manufacturing or the workshop of the world, because almost all the things that we consume in the world are produced in China. So in China, despite that they turn out a huge number of graduates, they are also able to employ a lot of them because the manufacturing sector is very, very resolute. So in Ghana, for us to understand the unemployment situation in Ghana, we also have to look critically at what the manufacturing sector is doing. The manufacturing sector is not doing well at all. And because of that, even blue-collar job seekers can't even get a job they want. The white-collar jobs seekers can't also find another. So that is the problem. And it has to do with policy. If we want to look at what government have done historically, whether it is the United States of America or Western Europe, when they industrialized, the government was central in making policies that will generate jobs. But when we shifted from government dependency to private sector, the government left completely and also failed to support the private sector. The Ghanaian governments since 1983 have failed to support the private sector. They don't give them enough tax relief. They give the tax relief to foreign corporations. So Ghanaian-owned businesses are struggling. And that is a major problem when you want to create jobs. The Ghanaian own Peter was talking about the fact that you go through a lot of difficulties when you want to register. That is also a hindrance to job creation. You want to create jobs, reduce the bureaucracy. If you go, so the World Bank has something they call the ease of doing business. That is the number of days that it takes for a business to get registered. If you come to Ghana, the last time when I checked the global lake, we were at the bottom. The highest performing country in Africa is Rwanda. Rwanda, it takes less than a week for a business to get registered. So when a business is registered within a week, the rest of the weeks are used in preparing the ground for production. But it takes 3 months, 6 months in Ghana for a business to get registered. So how is the person going to create jobs when even registration takes him so long? So with its government policies, and it has to also be linked to corruption, because people have created empire. If they make it so easy for you to register your job, they are not going to get the profit that they want in terms of corruption. So these are all things that collectively impact on job creation in the country. So government policies are a critical aspect. We need to reassess. Since we decided to liberalize the economy, we need to reassess the policies that have been implemented so far. Because some of these policies have actually made Ghana difficult to progress. We haven't moved beyond 1980. If you look at where Ghana is today, it is where Malaysia was in 1989. The current position in Ghana, where we are today, is where Singapore was in 1980. So we are not moving anywhere, and we look as if we are not even aware of what is going on. So these government policies need to be reassessed, and then where we're falling short, we need to address them.
Thank you very much. And I think that you already kickstarted the discussion on how, the Sub-Saharan African region can create and sustain employment opportunities. And you have touched a bit on some of the government policies that hinders employment opportunities. But Edmond, I wanted to come to you briefly before we start the second round on how, or your suggestions, all of you, on how we can address this problem. Because you said something which caught my attention. You said for Ghana as an example, the kind of economy that we have, you do not build this economy with service jobs. But why do you say that? Because I also thought that, so if we do not build it with service jobs, then what do we build it with?
Okay, so we need to understand the symbiotic relationship between the different sectors of the economy. The service sector, right, on the manufacturing and on the agricultural sector, unless you want to tell me that your service sector is driven by import, which is the case in Ghana. So in Ghana, your service sector is mainly driven by import and the financial sector. And that's why we don't see the link. But the problem with this service sector is that you do not produce anything, or you produce very less. And when you produce very less, there is a whole chain of job creation that get blocked. So imagine, instead of producing the tomato paste yourself, you import the tomato paste from China. Yes, it comes in and it adds on to whatever. However, there is a whole chain of job creation blocked because the farmer is no more employed. The manufacturing is no more employed. When the manufacturing is in service, then you employ the accountant, you employ the bookkeeper, you employ the marketers. They all get blocked. So you don't build your economy this way. We should not be happy that over the past years, the service sector has eclipsed the rest of the sectors. And actually the rest of the sectors are declining because we've turned into a country of importers, and that's all we do. I mean, all the rich people in Ghana, just take a look. They all do import and export. That's all they do.
Thank you. So I think that clarifies it very well. That, I mean, we take delight, and I remember one of our shows, you also talked about the fact that we have not moved away from an import-based economy. We should move into value addition, which is not something we are doing. It's all about our kind of services is all about importing of our raw materials. Peter, I don't know whether you had any reaction to what Edmond said. I mean, or probably whether I also misquoted you by saying that blue collar, jobs pay better compared to high collar jobs. And if you could add, something around how, I know you touched on the government policies, but briefly, if you could also add something around how, the informality of our economy also, affects underemployment and unemployment.
Yeah.
Then I come to Edmond to say something around that in a minute or two.
All right. Yes. So Edmond, yes, I sure agree with you. Depending on, the economy. So there are some economies where blue-collar jobs, takes the lead in terms of remuneration. But yes, you also have a point on saying that blue-collar jobs are less decent, or to some extent, the salaries are lesser than that of the white-collar jobs. Yeah, because that's what we see in Ghana. Obviously, I know maybe in Germany, there are more manufacturing companies in Germany. You have Benz, you have Adidas, and all these things in Germany. And they're all into blue-collar jobs. Airbus, Boeing, they are into manufacturing, and these are all blue-collar jobs. And the kind of salaries you take from Airbus, Boeing, iPhone, Apple, and the rest, Samsung, these are huge salaries. You get it. And then if you look at the financial system, those working in the banking sectors, the global investment sectors, they also earn a lot. So it depends on maybe geographical location, it depends on the kind of economy we build in, in a particular country. Actually, in all, I always say, if you have a carpenter, let me use that, I look at a carpenter in a local contest. He prepared a dining table for me within a week. And he earned 1,500 Ghana cedis for just that within a week. So let's assume he's even producing a lot of these or 4 times of this in a week. And 1,500 times 4 is about 6,000 Ghana cedis. Someone will sit in the bank for the whole month, and he might be earning less than that. Okay, and apart from the dining table, he might be doing other kind of, production of this furniture. So he earns a lot from that side. And there are this kind of repairing, rehabilitations, all these kind of small, petty kind of jobs that goes around these blue-collar jobs also earn the person. So money flows in that person's hands each and every minute and each and every day, compared to one who sits in the office and waiting for a bank notice or an SMS notice that he has been paid. But just that we don't quantify what flows in their hands. They don't quantify. They don't account for it. So they don't know how valuable that kind of job you do earns them. That's been the situation we have in Ghana. But currently, I'm carpenters, and I can tell you that the kind of money I'm making from the carpentry business alone is so huge. Look at maybe a contractor taking up a whole plaza, about 15 units plaza. Look at the amount of money we get. Those of us who know Trasapo, look at the huge building around the Kwashiru and about. The person who puts up that building, the kind of money you get can stay him for about 5 to 10 years, compared to one who's in the white-collar jobs, who will be depending on these salaries.
Okay.
So I always say that if you take out the perception and let people understand that there are so much resources, innovations, and money in the blue-collar jobs, I'm telling you, people will make it. People will really make it more than the white-collar jobs. Because white-collar jobs are mostly like hand to mouth. You wait monthly, you pick it up, it ends there, and then you are praying for the money to come back again. That has been the situation. But on the other hand, as you Evans mentioned, you are asking for federal government policies or federal explanations on what policies we can look at, if I'm right.
Yeah, let me go around and come back to you. I wanted Edmond to touch briefly on how the informality in our system also affects unemployment and underemployment. Briefly, Edmond, in a minute or two.
So briefly, I would start from a historical point of view that as society was built on an agrarian or maybe fishery type of economy, we were much into trade. So that's where we are coming from until things were modernized and we stepped into this, what you might call the white collar field. And so it has been with us for a long time that we trade that way, which was coined informal around 1970. But what it means is that many Ghanaians are self-employed or many Ghanaians do their own businesses. And I wouldn't call that as a cause of unemployment. So it has this two-way relationship. Unemployment causes informality, informality causes unemployment, the other way around. But what we see currently is that the Ghanaian economy is driven by the informal sector, if you want to put it that way. And it is driven by the informal sector just because of some reasons. Because a job is classified as informal if it doesn't contribute directly to the GDP of a country, or it tries to hide and not pay taxes or go through the normal tax regulation and so on and so forth. And the reason for it being so is that we have high tax systems in our country. I mean, the tax rate in Ghana is crazy. And people don't want to pay these taxes. They go into the informal sector to do their own thing. So Peter can make the claim that a carpenter makes 6,000 cedis just because he's hiding behind the law. Like if I establish my manufacturing company where I manufacture where I do furnitures, I wouldn't be making that much because I'll be paying taxes, I'll be paying social security contribution, I'll be paying all sort of things. But the informal sector creates this environment, and then it creates a shadow economy where people don't get the wages that they deserve. But I would say it's the engine of our economy. If you look at the evolution of how the Ghanaian economy has come to be, this is who we were. We were traders. So it's a huge part. It's an integral part. We cannot get rid of it. However, we need to think about how do we formalize this sector. There are a lot of opportunities in there. There are a lot of opportunities. And trust me, many Ghanaians are also doing it not just because they are not finding employment. They are also doing it because of economic freedom. Because most people don't want to go for a 9-5 job and then get told what to do and what not to do when they can establish things and do things on their own. But we come to the problem where there are not enough policies to support this sector. So it remains informal at our own pace or at our own decision. If we want to formalize them, I've not seen much effort into formalizing the informal sector. But if we want, we can do it, but we don't see that. So yes, one would say we have a huge informal sector, but I see it as an escape, because if I don't find job with the public sector or in a corporation, I escape to that sector and I do my own thing. And many Ghanaians have come to realize that it's actually not something defaming. There is dignity in it. You can do your own job. You can be your own boss and earn your own money. So we will see this moving forward, that many young people would want to do their own business. And that's where the government needs to come in. That's where we need to wake up and say, our economy is unique in itself, in its nomenclature or in its way it stands now. So how do we tap into the different fields? Because the effect of this is that you
please end in a minute for me.
Okay, I end it here. So you have a very small tax sector. You can recoup very few revenue only from the public sectors or only from the so-called formal sector. However, the money, as Prince Peter said, is in the informal sector.
Thank you very much. And sure, go ahead.
Intervention. What Edmond said is absolutely correct, but we have to also understand that the informal sector, as we call it, is not only about selling, it is also about manufacturing. If you go to Kumasi, for instance, we have people who produce low quality shoes. These people are low quality bags that people go and buy and they sell. So we have to be very clear that the informal sector is not only about people selling chewing gums, selling what you call it, but people are also into manufacturing. And when people are into manufacturing and they get support, they sometimes grow their businesses to be able to employ people. Because we have to understand that when you have a huge people or huge number of your youth who are unemployed, you should be prepared to face the consequences. For instance, we know that if you go to countries like Nigeria, where they have a lot of violence is completely linked to unemployment. If you come to Ghana, you see that you have a lot of people who are into fraud, internet scam. They are people who are supposed to be working, but they can't find job, so they have quickly moved into internet scam. You also have people who are into crimes. They commit crimes every here and there, and you cannot delink crime from unemployment. A country that has huge youth unemployment is always likely that the crime rate in that country will be very high. And if you look at Ghana over the years, we've been having serious crime being committed all around the country. Armed robbery here and there, burglary here and there. Now, if you look at, say, Nigeria or Cote d'Ivoire or Burkina Faso, look at the number of terrorism that is taking place in these countries and look at their unemployment numbers. You realize that they have a huge numbers of youth who are unemployed. So these people are easy to be recruited by people who have diabolical intentions, but diabolical ideologies. So unemployment is also linked to terrorism. And terrorism, for you to eliminate terrorism in West Africa, you need to address the challenges of unemployment. But apart from that, we also have political instability. Ghana, if you look at any election that we have since 1992, our elections look like war zones. And it is so because of unemployment. We have invisible forces, we have Bamba boys, we have all these people. What are they doing? They are unemployed youth who have just been mobilized by political parties to pursue their own agenda. So unemployment has a real consequence for stability of the country. And if as a country, if we want to do well, we want development, we want stability, we want peace, and we want security, we should look at our unemployment situation, because right now we have a lot of guns in the country, guns everywhere. It is so easy for me, if I have 10,000 pounds, I can mobilize people and invade Ghana from anywhere. Because with 10,000 pounds, I can pay 10 people. I can get about 500 AK-47. And then what have I done? I have formed an army. I have formed a civil army. And I can invade. And that is what Chastela did in 1989 when they invaded Liberia from Cote d'Ivoire. He had a lot of money. He was able to recruit unemployed youth, and they followed him and invaded Liberia. And then the West Africa sub-region became a gun-fighting region where we have guns all over. Cote d'Ivoire got engulfed, Sierra Leone got engulfed, Guinea got engulfed, and Guinea-Bissau became part of that game. So unemployment is a critical issue. And it is unfortunate that in Ghana, politicians do not look at it seriously, simply because we have been very lucky not to have our unemployment generating civil wars. But the next time that if we don't sit down and look at our problems, this problem will completely engulf us and it will be too late to address it.
Thank you very much. And also thanks that you brought back the consequences of unemployment, which nearly got missing in our discussion. And one of the major consequences you have outlined here is the stability and security issues, and the fact that there's a lot of hooligans and thuggery and vigilantism in our body politics. And part of the reasons is as a result of the high unemployed youth that we have in the country. So I'll allow Edmond and Peter just to say something, a minute or two, please, on some of the consequences of unemployment that we have. I start with you, Edmond.
So I would kind of comment on what Lord said, that unemployment, when I meant informal sector, it meant selling. I didn't mean selling. So it's a very broad terminology that says anything that goes unregulated or doesn't contribute directly to the GDP of a country could be classified as informal. And one of the characteristics is that things are very shadowy. And my problem with how informality is growing in Ghana is that it's growing in the so-called formal sector. And I'm going to give you an example how it's growing in the so-called formal sector and has become one of the causes of unemployment in Ghana, because we've allowed so-called formal companies, maybe banks, insurance companies, to mess up with the youth of Ghana. When you graduate, they employ you, they call you marketing, whatever. You don't have a base salary. You are working on a commission basis. So imagine thousands and thousands of Ghanaians are roaming all over the country with no base salary, but they are being paid on commission. And a month you roam, you visit like 100 people and you just get 3 people, which means you might be getting somewhere around 150 Ghana cedis. See? So what happens is that people get into it, they realize it's not worth it, and they get back. So what does it create? It creates marginally attached people or marginally unemployed people, because it seems like the sector that should employ you is taking advantage of you. And it's also one area that we've just overlooked, in that these former companies are doing shadowy, or they are doing shady deals just right in the faces of the officials. And it also accounts to the informality. And there are huge companies in Ghana which also operate informally. Go to our major business districts like Accra, go to Mokola, go to Edum, go to all these big places. And you see people operating huge companies. They are earning so much money, but they are paying the people they are working peanuts. They are paying them peanuts. And nobody is talking about this. So if we want to move forward, which we might come to talk about this, we need to formalize all this. We need to draft policies that will protect the worker, that would not let a foreign company come into Ghana, employ thousands of young Ghanaians and don't give them a base salary. However, tell them to do something called marketing. What's the meaning of this? Which means people are roaming all the time in this hot sun, and they cannot even make 400 Ghana cedis a month. Would you stay in such an employment?
Absolutely not. And then you end on that for me because of our time. Peter, if you have a minute or two on the consequences that Lord talked about, is there anything you would love to add?
Yeah, so I think Edmond and they said they've made all the points in terms of security, which you say is much interested in.
All right.
But I also touch on poverty and migration. Because poverty is a crucial driver for many migrants.
True.
And unemployed, it creates this kind of poverty we're experiencing. So the unemployment is a consequence of poverty, and poverty is caused by unemployment.
True.
And in that regard, people move to places where jobs are created, or they move to an employable economy like South Africa, take the risk to go to Dubai, Qatar, and the rest. And then in that case, too, when people are unemployed and they know that they do not be unemployed, the little money they're able to save, they try to risk to migrate to the Europe or Asia looking for jobs. So for us to, balance this, we have just create jobs. I always say that to fight poverty is to create jobs. And when you create jobs, earning decently, obviously people will rise from the levels of poverty, and then their standard of living also improve. So the major key to fighting poverty is to create jobs.
Is to create jobs. Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Peter. So we come to the second round. I have AK Mensah on the line, who is live streaming on Facebook. But before I bring him in, I just want to prepare the grounds that in the second round, I will start with you, Lord. And here, I know you have been saying a lot about, things that government is not doing well. Well, Peter talked about the labor policies, and all of you have touched on it. So what I would love that you do would be to look at what areas of government intervention would you suggest, moving forward, so that this could help to reduce the high unemployment rates that we have in Africa and in Ghana in particular. I know we've talked about it, but we'll be happy if you take it one after the other, important areas of intervention you would expect various governments to do. I have to also say that there seems to be a common agreement here that when it comes to job creation, the private sector is the one supposed to do it. And I know Peter has very strong opinions on that. If you look at some of the things he writes on social media, but we do believe government has a role. And what would you suggest to the government? But before that, AK Mensa. Hello, AK Mensa, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, so you are live streaming on Facebook, and what do we have? Is there anything that you would want to share with us so far?
Thank you so much. I think those are brilliant opinions being shared and ideologies being poured out today. I would like to also make some few interventions and interjections to support what the panelists have actually dissected. One of the critical things that Peter talked about was the need for the informal sector to be recognized. And I strongly believe that the informal sector should be recognized. I am of the opinion that jobs, be they blue color or regardless of the color, whether they are white or whether they are blue, should be able to lift people out of poverty. So that is what we should. So the most important point here is that we are creating jobs. On that note, that is why we need to look at our education sector and the courses and that are run. One of the things that Edmond talked about, which was more about education, and Peter also supported, even there are people who go to the secondary school or the technical school, they do metal, okay? And people are doing catering, people are doing other vocational courses, mechanical engineering at the secondary school level, but these people are not even recognized. Okay, these are guys which are not recognized in the society, and they think that these people who go to such educational institute are those who have failed. I think this stereotype and the myth should be demystified, and that a child, we should invest more into the vocational training or the vocational education sector, because that is what is going to boom the economy, in terms of the manufacturing aspect. So it is something that should be taken really seriously and should not be sidelined. And when you come to Germany, for instance, Germany, there are specific universities or colleges or technical institutes that are specifically training people for the manufacturing sector. We talk about the Hochschule or the Fachhochschule. That is what happens in Germany. It's not everybody who goes to the university. So you, depending on your strength and depending on what you are capable of doing and your ability, they should be able to put you at a sector that you can come out and contribute to the economy. That is why, on this note, I am of the opinion that, you know, every child that is born in a community or in a society is a talent and an institution, and that every child's talent should be unearthed for the benefit of the child himself through education, and also for the benefit of the common society. You know, there are some children, when they go to school, they fight and they have a lot of energy. It's not that the child is stubborn. The energy of this child could be harnessed, okay? And for the benefit of the child and for the benefit of the society. There are children who are very good at playing football when they are young. Parents end up beating them and they say they are not learning because they are playing football. When you do that, you kill the potential or the talent of this child. And so a child who is capable of playing football should be put in an institution where this child's skills could be trained, and at the end of the day, it will benefit the child for himself and for the benefit of also the society.
Thank you very much. I think that for the sake of our time, I mean, point well made. I like one of the things you said.
I think I will just end here.
No, because
it's my last point.
All right, go ahead.
Another informal sector that should be captured is the informal mining sector, which is mostly known as the artisanal small-scale mining. You know, Peter talked about curbing migration and how poverty is leading to people migrating. People can get money as much as 20 million, or let's say 20 or 20 million. Is it 20 million? A lot of money. Like how much money do you need to travel abroad? People can get something like 600 million. Okay, 600 million could do a lot in Ghana. Okay, if you boost the informal sector as well, such person could get a business, and also removing bureaucracies and all that, which become obstacles against establishing businesses. If you could remove, such person can, instead of you to go to another country, you can use 600 million to establish yourself something, and at the end of the day, you'll be better off. That is why in paper that is actually written by Bansa 2009, he was looking at how the artisanal small-scale mining could curb the migration problem, and that if you're able to boost the artisanal small-scale mining, we could use it as a poverty amelioration tool in many mining communities. People could also, and that could curtail the proliferation of people migrating into different countries in search of greener pastures. So probably at the end of the day, I'll read some comments that people also had.
All right, thank you very much. But just on the, before you leave us, just on the lighter note, you said some kids go to school and they like fighting and their energy could be channeled into what? Into boxing or wrestling? Is that what you're promoting?
That is it. You know, you see, they go like that. It's not a every child is unique. Every child's talent, should be on earth, through education and training for the benefit of the child, and at the end of the day, for the benefit of the society. Look, every child, every human being, or every child is a full institution, and that's how societies have grown. If a child is so strong, he has a lot of energy, it doesn't mean that you should beat this child and kill this child. This child could become a wrestler, you could become a boxer. You understand?
Absolutely. But we shouldn't also encourage them to be fighting.
I'm not encouraging that they should fight.
Okay.
But let us look at where every child is good at and unearth the talent of every child for the benefit of the child himself and for the benefit of the greater society.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, A.K. Mensah, on that. And yeah, his live streaming on Facebook. So yes, Lord, like I said, we've said a lot about what the government could do to help address these unemployment challenges that we face in Africa and in particular Ghana. But if you could walk us through kind of in a stepwise way, what would you suggest?
I want all of us to understand that development is a process. It doesn't end. It starts somewhere, and I like Edmond's submission when he said, we were agrarian and now we are into service. That is what development is about. You move from one point to another. And this development process is not the work of only one sector. When I say only one sector, I'm talking about government sector and the private sector. If you look at the history of the world, all the countries that have industrialized, they had the government and the private sector playing their roles efficiently. United Kingdom was the first country in the world to industrialize. Britain, when they started the industrialization process in somewhere around the 18th century, they were very active in supporting, the government was very active in supporting the private sector. If you come to Ghana right now, where we are, since 1983, when we shifted from government dependency policies to private sector dependency policies, there's very little coordination, there's very little communication between the private sector and then the government. Government policies have been very poor in design. There's very little support, and no private sector can function effectively producing, distributing, making goods available to people without a well-designed government policies. Go to South Korea. This Sub-Saharan company that we see, this company started in the 1970s. Where is Samsung now? It is one of the powerful multinational corporation companies in the world, producing a whole range of products. But Samsung became Samsung because the government gave them a strong backing. The South Korean government had a policy called championing national companies. They were championing them. So they understood the global environment, that it is very competitive. So for a country like South Korea, for their companies to compete and succeed, they needed the government to support them. So the government backed them with loans. The government backed them with import licenses. The government backed them with market research, where they could send their goods for export. This is what the government did. And through that, South Korea was able to penetrate not only into Asian market, but into Europe and North American market. And now they are everywhere. But if you come to Ghana, this Ghanaian company that produces cars.
Is it the Katanka?
Katanka, you know. What support has the government given? The government hasn't given them enough support. But for this company to actually grow, mature, and to be able to compete with the likes of Toyota, with the likes of Jaguar, with the likes of Land Rover, they need support. They know they need financial support. They need technical support. They need even managerial support. But where has the government been in this area? So for government to not support these companies, they are actually not supporting them in generating jobs. And that is the reason why the jobs aren't there. Because the support that must come from the government to these private individuals or this private company, the support aren't there. And once the supports are not there, what would these companies do? Look, Ghana has been an import-consuming country. We import so much and consume it. When we consume, we don't save. So one problem that we have as a nation has to do with savings. Because if you don't save, you can't loan. Savings is linked to borrowing. That is why cost of borrowing in Ghana is so huge. It's so high because people don't save. And the little that people save, all these companies with the plus the government go there to compete to borrow. So governments should also encourage people to save. One of the important things that led South Korea to grow is that they saved so much so that the government could tap it and give it to companies for them to grow. The South Korean government didn't have to go to the international market to borrow money. They tapped on the savings that the South Koreans have made. So Ghanaians should also be encouraged to save. And one of the reasons why, one of the things that we can do is to raise the interest rate that people earn when they save. If I put my money there for 6 months and I get 1%, I'm not going to put my money there for that kind of rate. So savings should be encouraged, and people should be supported when they save. These savings can then be properly channeled to companies. Because if you just allow people to go and take the loan from the government, from the bank, some of them are going to waste it. So the government should have a policy. If you're a company and you need certain amount of money, we will help you to get this money, but we will police you so that you will not go and waste the money. And I like to use South Korea and Japan because they are the two most important countries that have, over the last 50 years, become industrialized. And if you look at them, government's role in these countries, you cannot deny the government's role. The governments were active in supporting the companies. There's a company called Hyundai. It doesn't produce only cars. It produces so many things. If you go to Ghana, when a company is producing cap is what they will produce throughout. They don't diversify. And that is why most of them don't also make profit. So, but they can only do that with government encouragement. Government should lead them. At the moment, our industrial policies have collapsed since 1983. We don't have real impacting industrial policies. And we are at that stage because of World Bank. Because World Bank, since they told us to liberalize our economy, they said industrial policies are useless. But Germany and all these countries that are giants in the world have industrial policies. What does this industrial policy do? They help guide the industries, what they can do and what they cannot do. They identify the market for them. These are the kind of support that they can also get from the government. But our industrial policies have collapsed. We don't have one. And once you don't have one, everybody tries to do what he or she can. So government must lead. And I like my friend Peter, because he is a pro-private sector. But we have to understand that a private sector without the support of government can never do anything. That is why Ghana's private sector is as weak as it is, because there's little cooperation, there's little coordination, there's little communication between the private sector and the government. So if we really want Ghana to survive, grow, and mature, for all these unemployment problems to go away, then the government must sit down. That politicization of support shouldn't be there. Okay, it's an NDC company, I'm not going to support them. This kind of thing should not be entertained. Government policies must assist whoever needs it. That is the end of the story. The policies must assist whoever needs it. It is not because he's an NDC member or he's an MPP member. That kind of thing will never help Ghana to even reach where South Korea is today. South Korea is the world's 10th biggest economy. How did that country, in 1950, when Ghana gained independence in 1957, our economy, the GDP was 490. GDP per capita was 490, 491. Ours was 490. That of South Korea was 491. GDP per capita. Today, GDP per capita in South Korea is around 30,000 plus. Our GDP per capita is just around 2,000, 3,000. That tells us where we have been. Therefore, the support that governments must give to corporation, Ghanaian-owned businesses should be upfront. There should be no hesitant in government supporting our private sector. Otherwise, we cannot survive as a country, because we live in a highly competitive world where countries are investing in technology, supporting their companies. Why is highway in the cross line? Because it is linked to China. The Chinese government has been pumping money into highway because they understand that the world is more about competition. Therefore, Katanka should be supported by the Ghanaian government so that they will become an engine of growth in Ghana, supporting Ghanaian workers. Then they also support that company to diversify. They don't produce only luxury cars, but also home appliances. That is what Samsung did. Okay. So this is the kind of policies that government must put in place so that Ghanaian businesses can tap into these policies and then grow and hire Ghanaians. So that all this unemployment that my friend Peter was talking about, that has led to so many people suffering in Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, and whatever. We will not have it. Otherwise, we will continue. And this things has to do with human dignity. Human dignity. If a Ghanaian goes to Saudi Arabia and he's mistreated, he's treated as an animal, it has a lot of impact on our dignity as human beings, as Black people. Therefore, we should support Ghanaian businesses, irrespective of the party that is in power. We should do it because it is a national duty, and it is it's something that can help Ghana to survive this highly competitive global economic market. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lord. And that's a very interesting perspective there. And I was thinking that there seemed to be a lot to learn from South Korea and Japan. Why are we not doing so? But anyway, we'll come to that later. But with your main points were around that government should back the private sector, and you listed quite a number of things such as, import licenses, market research. There's one point that I wanted to follow up on. If you say, because you said in the case of South Korea, government gave them loans, and I want to ask you, is it really the duty of the government to give the private sector loans? I mean, apart from reducing, let's say, interest rates for them to be able to, borrow from the banks. Do you think this suggestion would work in a country like Ghana?
What the South Koreans actually did was what they call guaranteed loans. So they would tell the South Korean company, you go and borrow the loan, use it efficiently. If you cannot pay, we will take care of it. So it was a guaranteed loans. And that is what I know that under Rawlings did a lot of guarantee loans for a number of NDC people that I know. Francis Assise is one. This Ahoy. He did The NDC did a lot of guarantee loan for some of them. But it should be not only linked to political parties. It should be a national agenda that will support Ghanaian businesses. We guarantee loans for them. We guarantee that when they secure this loan and they are not able to pay because of their own fault of mismanagement, we will step in and then see to it that they are not hanged. So this is the policy that the South Koreans did. Apart from that, they also insisted that when they produce, part of what they produce should be exported. And because the policy was for them to gain more foreign exchange, because the more foreign exchange earning that you receive from your export, then you are able to build your reserve. Building the reserve, you can use that reserve to also expand your economy. So they had a clear strategy, export. And if you look at what South Koreans and the Japanese have been doing, they were export producing economies. They only depend on export. They started with 20%, 30%, then they shifted to 70%. So 70% of all the things that they were producing were going out. I want to say one thing about South Korea before I end. The South Koreans did not allow World Bank, IMF, to drive their industrial policies because they have their own agenda. I have to be very clear. They have their own agenda. They support a type of global economic system. So, therefore,
so just to go ahead.
Yeah, if you don't, and if you allow them to dictate to you what you can do, because what they want Ghanaians to do or Ghana to do is to continue to import. That has been their policy so far.
So that brings me to a very last one, and you do that in a minute or two, because you mentioned also one of the key elements that is needed, especially from the government side, is the industrial policy, and you brought in the aspect of South Korea that they did not allow all these Bretton Woods institutions to influence them. But you made an assertion that we don't have an industrial policy. Is it that we have, but it's being influenced by the IMF and the World Bank and the others, or we don't have at all as a country? It's a bit strange.
We don't have.
Interesting.
Since we liberalized our economy,
we don't have an industrial policy.
It was taken off the radar. Industrial policies were taken off the radar. And that because of that, we haven't, look at the Vision 2020. Vision 2020 is just an agenda. It has nothing in there that Kenyan businesses can tap in to grow. So industrial policies telling us, okay, we want in 10 years' time, we want Katanka or whatever to become a medium size company producing maybe 5,000 cars. That is the industrial policy that we have. How are we going to help Katanka to do that? They need raw material from that. They need these resources. They need this human resource. They need this capital. So we help them to organize it. We don't just write documents and put them and say we have industrial policy. No. And that is what the South Koreans did. They understood the need for them to support their companies. So they backed them with loans, with capital. There was a company. South Korea today is the world's biggest builder of ships. But they didn't have architects that could design ships. They came to Scotland. A Scottish company was collapsing. And an ambassador in South Korea, in Britain here, bought the company, shipped all its technical equipment and design and all these tools to South Korea. And they trained people on it. And now South Korea is the world's biggest builder of ships. That is what industrial policies do.
All right, thank you very much. And it's a very interesting perspective. And with this industrial policy aspect, that's great, I would say, Lord. And for the sake of our time, I come right away to you.
Let me clarify this.
Peter, go ahead. Go ahead.
So Lord, bravo. I think you really understand the Ghana's private sector revolution. But I'll say that there is a manufacturing or Ghana's industrial policy. There's a huge document for that during the time of the then Minister Hannah Tete. Okay, so it was built on the growth and poverty reduction strategy. It was also built on the national trade policy. Then there is this national medium-term development framework. And then we also have the private sector development strategy. All these documents were linked to the industrial, I mean, the policy on industrialization in Ghana. But as Lord said, the problem had been the implementation. Yes, they are on papers, but we have a huge document for our industry. It's a huge document on the fully written document at the Ministry of Trade and Industry. Just a clarification on that.
Yeah, thank you very much. I definitely thought we definitely have one, but maybe the inputs and what exactly we have, whether it also addresses our needs as a country or not. So it would have been nice to hear both Peter and Edmond on the role that the government could play. But in your own submission, if you could chip in that this would be fine for the sake of time. Peter, like I said, I mean, we all know that you are more of a private person, and so yes, the government. There are a lot of issues, as Lord has already, mentioned. In your own way, we know the private sector, which we all say it is the engine of our economic growth, cannot also do it alone. I mean, without the help of the government. But for the private actors themselves, what roles do you suggest that they should be doing moving forward? Even if we admit or we assume without admitting that the government will not be playing any better role. What kind of roles do you expect the private sector to be doing to help address the unemployment and underemployment that we have?
I always been saying that the private sector should engage in, job creation, GDP growth. The private sector should also see its activities as a way of poverty reduction activities. Because over the years, the private sector has been like to gain profit. It's a profit-making environment. So government itself is to some extent, even though they are in government, you have individuals in government, they still do business in the private sector just to make profit. The motive has been profit-making. So we have these multinational corporations, we have these local individuals who have some kind of money within, they have some financial muscles. They are all in there to make money. It's all about profits. It's not solution-oriented. It is not a poverty reduction private sector. It's just ordinarily that of profit. And that's what we are missing. You get it? So everybody wants to get into the private sector, just to make profit, acquire wealth, build some properties, and then when he retires, he enjoys. That's it. But the private sector should look at it beyond profit making and wealth creation, and then look at how its activities, engagement, and everything that it does, whether production, whether marketing, branding, sales, everything. Multinational corporation. Come again, please.
Please go ahead. Sorry.
All right. Yeah. So once it becomes a profit-making industry, the president will lose it, because if you are fighting for a tax relief, if you are fighting for tax holidays, if you are fighting for tax refund and all these things, it's just for making profits. And private sector has to move away from profit-making machine as the engine of growth, the poverty reduction, and the provision of decent jobs. When the private sector see the need to do this, I'm quite certain the economy will grow, will evolve. Because there are technologies that we are going to digitization. A lot of digitizations are going on in the private sector, but the purpose is to make profit. That has been my major worry. So I expect all these local entrepreneurs, despite Kama and the rest, or they should pump in their resources to help uplift the vulnerable from their poverty. It is then that we will see that the private sector is functioning to ensure the growth of the economy. Then, Lord was talking about this kind of mismatch, or this kind of miscommunication, or there's no communication, there's no link between private sector and public sector. It is 100% true. There is no link. I mean, you're even just lenient to use little. I'm saying that there's no link between the public sector and the private sector. And that is affecting the entire growth of the private sector. Because remember, I've been advocating that we should have even the GDP for the private sector of Ghana. So we know the GDP for the private sector of Ghana contribute to the entire GDP or nominal GDP at this percentage. Then we can quantify the efforts of the private sector, and then we know what they are lacking, what they need to do going forward, what policies we need to do to ensure they are sustained. All these things aren't there. So once we miss this communication, we miss the link, we miss the nexus between the private sector and GDP growth. Obviously, we are going to have the private sector being weak, and currently it is weak. So if you have seen the mid-year budget, the private sector had created only 262,000 jobs, whereas the public sector had created 777,000 jobs. That's a huge gap. You get it? But then this can be anything about politics, so I don't want to go there. But if it currently becomes a data we need to accept for us to work with each and every time, because the mid-year budget approved by Parliament, so it becomes a data-driven stuff. You know, then the private sector must be a data-driven sector. You know, there's no data driving the private sector. If the private sector is working basically on employment, then it should have that kind of data to understand what kind of job you need to create each year, quantify the cost involved, and then project the importance of this kind of jobs created in the medium and long-term kind of activity. But we don't have data, anything that is driving the private sector. There's no data, you know. So difficult to even know the number of people who are in small scale enterprises, those in the medium scale, those in the large scale. There's no data on it. So currently, you guys, I know you've been following Ghana a lot, and I'm happy. Always when I see you guys writing and talking about Ghana's life, why do you guys even sleep at all? Because you listen to so many things about Ghana. During the COVID-19, they said there are about 180,000 small SMEs in Ghana was going to benefit from a package, a stimulus package. And these are all lies. You know, we don't have that data. There are no number of businesses, only the small, the medium, small scale, large scale, over 180,000. There's nothing like that. There's no data. There's no scientific data. The data shouldn't just be data. It should be scientific, and it should be dependable enough, and then it should be reliable, that everybody can pick it and understand what's going on. So World Bank will conduct a small research on the private sector, and then they get funding for it, and they put it out there. IMF also conduct a small research on it, they get it, they put it out there. Dance Statistical Service, they also do DS, a little, then they put it out there. So there's this kind of inconsistency in data. They are all just scattered all over. So we don't understand what happens in the private sector. Don't know the Ghanaians in the private sector. We don't know how much they earn per hour, per day, per week, per month. You know, because there's no data on them. So the population enhancing census this year should look at, a data-driven private sector as part of their project, as well as the Ghana Living Standard Survey. Should also look at the private sector and then, get some data out of that and use that to ensure that we have a coherent public policy coming from the government to support the private sector's growth. I'm telling you, we are still going to fail as the private sector is failing.
Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, to emphasize one of the things you said, that the private sector should not focus too much on making profit. I guess it's important. Of course, that's why they are into business, but they should also think about job creation and also poverty reduction. Now, but just a quick one. When you talked about the data-driven, private sector, I was a bit curious, whose duty is it to be collecting those data? Because as we know, government is not doing that. Do you expect the private sector to do that, or?
Obviously, currently the president is able to put on, I think, a disease infection center. They all came together and they did that. So they can have a private sector data bureau, that only is data for the private sector alone, because the Ghana Statistical Service data is just a government-driven election data. You get it? So it doesn't support anything we do in the private sector. So the president can just come out. We have the Ghana, the AGI, the Association of Ghana Industries. They are all there. They have their own data. We have GUTA. They have their own data. So it is what this chamber of associations, unions, to form that kind of umbrella where they all bring together a particular or one data that will drive their own agenda. You see, so that they can know how to even engage the government. Because all the associations engage the government individually and what they want. But they should understand that whatever affects one group in the private sector equally affects the other groups. So until they come together with a particular data bureau center to drive their own agenda, where the government will even need them more. Because I always say that government need the private sector more to grow than they need the private sector. Even though I'm not saying they don't need the private sector. They certainly need the private sector, but the private sector don't need too much. But the government need the private sector more. So once you want to set up a data bureau, the government will come to you and ask you your data, then we have a manifesto. So you need to drive this manifesto in tandem with the data we have in the private sector, so that we can sustain the growth, develop innovation, and expand the entire private sector for job creation, and then we move on as a country.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Peter. That's a great submission out there. Edmond, I come to you we are really, really far behind our time, and I know you would want to touch on what Edmond and Lord said. Do that, but you do that within your own time. So you do it briefly for me. And the question we pose to you is, how do we promote sustainable self-employment among the youth? I know we've had a debate on informality and formality, and I feel that if we want to promote self-employment, then we also moving into more, of an informal kind of economy, even though we've seen the distinction that you and Lord have drawn when it comes to the informality itself. But how do we do that? Especially, how do we, convince or encourage people that it should not all be about, white collar jobs, but also blue collar jobs as well. So how do we promote self-employment?
Okay, so I will start with something that Lord said, and it touches on both what Lord and Peter said. So Lord is advocating for more government engagement, and Peter is advocating for more support for the private sector. And you are asking me, how do we promote self-employment? In what sense, I would ask? Because Lord gave a good example of Samsung. And if you care to know, or if we all want to learn, Samsung started in 1938 as a grocery company. So it was a grocery company. And a grocery company went through producing textiles, became a shipping company, set up a data company. And then the first product in electronics that Samsung produced was the black and white television. And now Samsung is producing phones and everything. So what I'm trying to say is it always starts from what we call informal. But the difference between the word informal and formal is that IN at the beginning, which I have coded it differently. The I would mean eradicating the hurdles. And then the N is nurturing and supporting the companies or the startups. And then you formalize all of them. So how do you sustain self-employed companies? Or how do you encourage self-employed companies? That is the beginning of every giant. See, Germany is Germany just because of what we call the hidden champions. And the hidden champions are middle-sized companies, mostly run by families, run by individuals. And they are billion companies. You don't know their names. Nobody knows them. They are under there. So if you talk about BMW, BMW produces a finished product. But that finished product produced by BMW is a compilation of different components. Somebody produces the nuts, one produces the tire, one produces the rims, one produces the glues. See, these are companies which you would call medium or small size companies, but functioning and very strong, operating behind. BMW is not BMW when these companies did not exist or will not exist. So we need to understand that every struggle that people put in, we shouldn't classify it immediately as informal or formal, because it's a process. Every company that we see today started somewhere where it was informal. As Lord will say, it evolved. So that evolution process would need the support of the government, the enabling environment. I give you a specific example. Ghana is just 24,000 square kilometer, I guess, but it still appears too big from north to south. Why? Just because we don't have good transport infrastructure. So if you are moving from the north to the south, it takes you like 8 hours, 9 hours through stress and struggle. No internet connectivity or no stable internet connectivity, let's put it that way, in many parts of the country. Why? Because we're giving it in the hands of telcos and they determine the price, they determine the availability. So one recommendation I would give if we want to sustain started companies, or if we want to formalize companies, which is the way to go to solve unemployment, is to make the country more smaller. And if you want to make the country more smaller, a good road between Kumasi, Accra, if not you put the highway through a traffic congested area, could take you 3 hours to reach Accra. So we need good infrastructure to make Ghana smaller, because if Ghana is smaller, then you expand the market base of the companies. I don't need to sell only in Accra if there is a good transport system. Look at Germany. Germany is maybe 4 times the population size of Ghana closely, and also in landmass, very big than Ghana. However, I sit in Heidelberg and I order something from all the way from Hamburg, and it takes me 2 days, 3 days, and I receive it. Can you imagine? Which means with better infrastructure, the guy who is now producing beautiful clothing in Accra can sell to somebody in Takwa, they can sell to somebody in Takwa. We open up the market, we open up the country, we merge it into one small, big thing. You know what I mean? So there are things that we can do to gradually formalize this informal sector, and these are the future of the country. Because if that's what drives your economy and you don't pay any attention to it, Peter was talking about private sector. There are 2 types of the private sector. There is the formal private sector and there is the informal private sector. And what we normally focus on when we say private sector is the formal private sector. They get all the support. The informal private sector, zero. And how do you move out of this when your economy is based on them? And I was making a point that it affects the growth of the economy in the sense that your tax mobilization is also crippled, because majority of the money movement or the transaction movement in the country is happening in this, what you call informal sector. And how do you get out of there? How do you bring them in? How do you set up an inclusion policy to expand your tax bracket? It goes back to this point. So we need to support business development. It needs to trickle down to this minute entity. It doesn't end at the big private firms who get tax holidays and tax breaks and whatever. However, the small guys down there doesn't get anything, but they are running the economy of this country. What happens is that we see the indirect effect of what they do in the GDP.
And I'm sorry, Edmond, if you could end in a minute or 2 for me, please.
Yeah, so ending in a minute or 2, I think, like I stated, we need to find a way of dealing with the I and N in front of the informal to make it formal, because formality comes with scale and scale comes with employment. Because when a small company now becomes a big company or medium-sized company, they move from 10 people to 100 people. And in that, you just add 90 people, and that 90 people reduces the unemployment rate. The government has the role to play. The government has the role to reduce the barriers. And one thing I would want the young people of Ghana to stand up for in this election is to tell the government that we need stable internet connection, not a stable internet connection. We need a better connectivity of the whole country. It doesn't have to be left in the hands of telecommunication companies who decide to us how much we get, and they decide the data pricing policy, and it's so expensive. Because look at the new economy. The new economy is the global economy. The new economy is the delivery economy, is the internet economy. And if that basic thing, that the basic component, you lack that basic component, you don't have that basic component in place, we are crippled. And if we also want to sustain the companies that start, as we call the self-employed informal, we need also to bring them to take part of the global economy. Because that is the only way that we can force scale. And the scale comes along with employment because they get bigger. The same way that Amazon started from somebody's warehouse and now it's the largest employer. The same way we can also help our young people who want to start something and give them the support to become the largest employer in the country. Once we don't do that, once we always rely on the so-called non-private sector, which is the private formal sector, who are, as Lord has said, continuously they failed us because they have even found ways to step into the informal way of doing things, doing shadowy deals. So we need to redirect our support. I'm not saying neglect what we are doing for the others, but to include everybody. Like Albert said, we need to include everybody. They need support. We need to support everyone.
Thank you. And yeah, that's very true. I like what you said, that we need to find a way to address the I and end in the informal term. I've really enjoyed the conversation. There are a few more questions I would love to ask, but for the sake of our time, Albert, we have Albert on the line, AK Mensah, who is again live streaming on Facebook. If you could give us some few comments and questions, and then I come back to my guest here for their concluding remarks because our time is far spent. Albert, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you so much.
So you have just 2 minutes, and I'm straight with that. 2 minutes.
I think we just want to get more interactive by acknowledging some of the comments and the questions people have also put. One comment from Sir Bless. I'll be brief and I'll summarize. She is of the opinion that one of the main causes of unemployment in Ghana is the mindset put in the minds of students to only work in formal sectors, like just as Peter was also saying, but not to create their own job. Entrepreneurship and skill training is not factored in our education system or curriculum. Skill training is left for only dropouts. Akosia, who is a regular panelist on Sub-Sahran Talk, and she actually tells me she's listening from Canada on her machine, and she's saying that congratulations because she could get to follow now. And Fosca of Fusuhin is saying this is very educative. You guys should keep it up. Bright PJ is saying thumbs up, guys. Then Akosia is saying yes, each person has his or her own strength and capabilities, but our society doesn't recognize that. AK, thumbs up. And this is very important. It's very important. We have parents and teachers who don't, from Akosia, parents and teachers who don't even seem to understand child psychology or behavioral management, confusing children and surprising and suppressing their talents, she means. And he's also saying that we should keep on, and she's enjoying from the comfort of her home in Canada. He's saying, Lord is making a very good point. Singapore, South Korea, and New Zealand handled the pandemic very well, successfully, while avoiding an economic downturn because of economic surpluses, which they used to inject sizable stimuluses. So that is so far what I can share.
Thank you very much, AK Mensah, for doing this for us. So, gentlemen, please, a minute each on your concluding remark. I'll start with you, Peter. Peter, yes, just your concluding remark on the way forward.
Right. So currently, I want to say that job loss in the private sector is now a norm. So private sector should sincerely support government policies or support government to formalize the entire system, bring on board the informal sector, and get policies, a long-term policy that could increase growth, sustainability, and the generation of employment in the country. Beyond that, I also say that there are more business schools in Ghana than science and engineering. So we should try and give some few tax reliefs and tax rebates, or make the entire environment more accommodative for schools to be set up in the sciences and the engineering, to train more engineers and more science students on metrics and all other forms of engineering to contribute to the entire growth of the country. So the business schools are too much. Though we need them, we still need more science and engineering schools.
Thank you very much. And I come to you, Lord, for your concluding remark in a minute.
Thank you very much. A point of correction. I think I agree with Peter when you said Ghana has got industrial policy. I just checked, and I've got to know that the Ministry of Trade and Industry have industrial policy. That is what I want to just chip in. But my concluding remark is that we have to take unemployment seriously, because its repercussion on Ghanaian stability, development, security, and all that is at stake. It's very critical. Countries that have gone through civil wars, Rwanda, Democratic Republic of Congo, Liberia, Sierra Leone. Currently, when I look at Nigeria, it is a nation struggling to stabilize itself. It cannot, simply because of the huge unemployment that has got an ideological, religious, ethnic complex being added to it. So if you have serious unemployment problem and you don't deal with it, it will come to a time that it will hit you so hard, you will find it difficult to even stand. So Ghana must, as a necessity and as a strategic position for national survival, we should address the youth unemployment in the country, because it has the ability to derail our economy. It has the potential to undermine our security. It has the potential to put Ghana back from what we have achieved so far. Because when I look at Somalia, when I look at Liberia, when I look at Sierra Leone, when I look at Cote d'Ivoire, when I look at all the countries that have gone through civil wars, youth, and even Northern Ghana, if you look at Northern Ghana, there have been 20 wars, medium-sized wars in Northern Ghana since 1988. 20 medium wars. Look at the role of the youth, and look at why unemployment is so serious. Because the northern conflict that we have been talking about, sometimes we act as if it doesn't exist. The youth are the ones bringing the guns. The youth are the ones that are pulling the guns, because they have nothing else to do apart from shooting. So unemployment has a real impact on national security.
Thank you.
We sit down and look at it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lord Eduse. Edmond, your concluding remark briefly.
Okay, so briefly, my concluding remark is that we can tackle this youth unemployment in two ways. We can deploy remedial strategies, and the remedial strategies that I would say is that the future of unemployment eradication in Africa lies in the informal sector, because we have it already. And if you want to do this, please, let's reduce the hurdles, let's reduce the taxes, let's make the ease of doing business very faster for people to register business, to operate businesses, and let's not cordon them off in partaking in business activities. And then we also should focus on some preventive strategies, and that I would mainly touch on education. We need to invest heavily in education. We need to plug in that missing link of vocational and technical education. We need to refocus, and this is something that we all, not just the government, the private, the individual, the society, we need to change our perception, and we need to tackle it on that front. If you would allow me to say that in Africa, many of the companies would rather sponsor entertainment programs than sponsor educative programs, which is sad. They are sponsoring beauty pageants. They are sponsoring all sort of reality shows on television. But ask them, how many of them do support educational initiatives? How many of them do partner with universities, do partner with secondary schools to build outside the curricular activities that would help people to learn skills? They don't do it, because as Peter said, we are so much profit-oriented that everybody is thinking about how much do I earn from that city or from that safer or from that naira, and never how much do I give back to the society. But this is a death cycle that we are engaging in, because if you fail to build a society today, you face the repercussion tomorrow, because in a society or in an economy where there is weak skills, then definitely businesses are not growing. Your expansion will be affected tomorrow due to the lack of the proper skills. You will go out and hire people and you will pay a lot of money for that expertise. Something that you could have acted now and support the education system or support young businesses to form that symbiotic relationship. It's a win-win situation for all of us. So that would be my recommendation as to how to tackle the problem of youth unemployment in Africa.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And let me also say a big thank you to viewers who followed us or followed AK Mensa during the live streaming on Facebook. Thanks also for your comments and your questions. And thank you very much. My guest has been Mr. Lord Eduse Akins, Mr. Edmond Yeboah, and Mr. Peter Bismarck Kofi. Viewers, thank you for making time with us. I'm sure you've been informed, you've been educated, and I would say we're grateful. I am Evans Apia Kisi. Catch you another time on Sub-Sahran Talk. Bye-bye.
Bye.